Hello, Year 7. There is a question that I would like you to think about. The question is, what are the 4 functions of a skeleton, which you looked at from the last lesson? Hopefully you were able to get them right. The first one is support the body. The skeleton helps the body to move. It protects vital organs, and it makes blood cells. In this lesson, which is the third lesson on week 8, we're going to be looking at movements and joints. The learning outcomes are you should be able to state where joints are found in the body, describe the structure and function of joints, explain how the parts of a joint allow it to function. So the question is, what is a joint? We're not talking about your afternoon roast, like your medium roast, beef roasting joint, nor are we talking about drugs either. A joint is where 2 or more bones meet. It can be movable or fixed. Can you give some examples of joints in your body? So you can stand in front of a mirror, have a quick look. Where would you say there are joints in your body? Okay, on this slide on your screen, you can see the location of different joints in the body. And hopefully you were able to pinpoint some of them. Joints allow the skeleton to move and rotate, and there are 3 types of joints: fixed joints, ball and socket joints, and hinge joints. A fixed joint is another name for fixed joint is fused joint. Fixed joints form between 2 bits of bone and they do not move. The plates of bone that make up our skull were once separate. So if you look at a newborn baby, for those of you that may have a very young sibling at home, their heads, and I'm not saying you should go and squish their heads, but their heads, their skulls are a bit soft, and that is because all the plates of the skull aren't quite meeting together. But as a baby grows, as a child grows, the plates of the bones fuse together to form a solid skull. The fusion of the bone means it cannot grow and get bigger or smaller. The next type of joint is the ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joints allow the joint to rotate in 360 degrees in all directions. An example would be in your shoulders and your hips. Hinge joints, they allow movement in one direction only. Can you think of 2 places in your body where you will find a hinge joint? So the picture on the screen is giving you an idea of where one of the locations is. So were you able to think about what this another location would be? So apart from the arm, where else would your body just move in one direction only? Parts of your body move in one direction only. I'm not going to tell you the answer yet, so we'll come back to that a bit later. What does a joint look like? So these are parts of a joint. So you've got the muscle, which is attached to the bone. You've got the synovial fluid, which is this bit here in blue. Then you've got the cartilage. The cartilage protects the ends of the bones to prevent them from rubbing together. And then you have ligaments. Ligaments are a type of connective tissue. They connect bone to bone or link bone to bone. Ligaments are elastic and stretchy. This allows the joint to move where it needs to, but keeps the bones aligned. A torn ligament will cause somebody a great deal of pain. Then we have cartilage. So the cartilage in the joint is shown here in blue. Cartilage is a strong, smooth tissue. There is cartilage between movable joints to protect the ends of the bone. When we move, cartilage in our joints acts to reduce friction to protect our bones. Again, this bit between the cartilage is the synovial fluid. Arthritis is when the cartilage wears down and the ends of the bone in a joint grind together when it is moved. And this is what causes pain. So let's have a quick recap. Link the type of joint with the movement it allows and an example of that type of joint. So pause the video now and try and link where the ball and socket with the bits in the middle. So you're going across basically. So ball and socket, are you going to link that to would it have movement? Yes or no? Is it going to be, if it does have movement, is that going to be at a 360-degree angle or 180-degree angle? And then an example of where you would find the ball and socket joint. And then do the same thing for the hinge joint. Again, you're going across and choosing what type of movement and then an example of where it's found, and the fixed joint, type of movement, an example of that type of joint. Like I said in previous lessons, you do not need to submit anything because the answers are coming up on the next screen, but it would be a good idea if you actually try and answer the questions instead of waiting for the answers to come on the screen. So ball and socket has a movement of 360 degrees. You will find it in the hip. So remember in the first, a few slides ago, I said one of the places that you will find a ball and socket joint was in the shoulders. The other one is in the hip. Hinge is 180 degrees. So you find a hinge joint in the arm. Another place you will find it would be in your knee. And then fixed joints have no movement at all. And an example of that is in the skull. Well done if you got them all right. What happens when people have damaged joints or they have missing limbs, for example? The picture on the screen shows a man who's got a prosthetic limb on his left leg, and this is to enable people who have such things to be able to live and move around more freely compared to when they just had one leg missing. It's never going to be quite the same as having both legs, but it does help to make life easier. There are pros and cons to having prosthetic limbs. One of the advantages, like I said, is being able to move around and doing things you couldn't do before. A disadvantage is that it can sometimes cause sores on people wearing them. And then you have like hip replacements, which tends to happen in older people more than younger people. And Here you can see that the ball and joint socket has been replaced, so that the person can move around more freely without being in a lot of pain. Now, there is a video that I would suggest that you watch. It's the dissection of a chicken wing. Normally, if you were in class, we will actually do the experiment where you would dissect a chicken wing and look at the different parts. You'll be looking at the joints, you would look at the muscles, you would be looking at the tendons and ligaments. So have a look at the URL that's at the bottom of the screen, type it in, and then just watch the dissection. After this slide, there's going to be a video of Mr. Aero showing the different types of joints in the body.
Year 7, we're going to talk about joints now. So there's 3 main types of joints in the human system. And we're going to use my buddy here, Bob, and myself in order to explain those 3 joints. So the first one we're going to talk about is a hinge joint. So if you just put your hand like that and go like that. So do you notice how your elbow just bends backwards and forwards? It's exactly like a door hinge that just goes backwards and forwards. That's the first type of joint. If we look here on my friend Bob, as you can see, that joint just goes backwards and forwards. And you can see the way the bones are made, they fit together just like a door hinge. Just like a door hinge, they just move backwards and forwards. So that's the first type of joint. Your knee is the same thing, hinge joint. Okay, the second type of joint we're going to talk about is a ball and socket. So a ball, just like your fist, and a socket, make your hand like that. A ball and socket can move in a lot of different directions, a whole range of movements. So if you look here on my friend Bob, as you can see, he's got a ball, so rounded top, and then he's got a socket that the ball fits in. And so he's got a whole range of movement inside of that socket there. So just like us, we've got a whole range of movement inside our socket. So our arm can go anywhere because of that shoulder joint. So that's a ball and socket. The third type of joint is a fused joint. So it's where bones touch, but they don't move. So we don't want any movement in the bone. And the easiest and best example is your cranium, your skull. So your skull has fixed joints in here where the bones are actually fused so that they don't move. Because you don't want the bits of your skull floating around because they're protecting your brain. So Bob here, he's got a fused bones in his skull in order to protect his brain inside. Anything else, Miss Odiemi?
Only what is between joints, having cartilage. So you can see cartilage between the vertebrae and the spine, and that is, and also you have cartilage between joints to prevent the bones from rubbing against each other. When they wear out, that is when people get arthritis in their elbows, in their fingers, wrists, knees, etc.
Lovely.